Hey, welcome to episode 177 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman, and today I'm so excited for this conversation because we are going to be weaving a lot of things together. Different cultures, a scientific approach to life, and a spiritual approach of life, and I have no idea what else yet. I know this conversation's going to surprise me. I hope it surprises you too. And I'm just so excited and grateful. And I'm going to tell you more, but first this.
Today's guest, Karla Abbott.
Hey, welcome back to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Let me tell you a little bit more about Karla Abbott. Karla Abbott DNP, and we'll ask more about those initials. And recently retired from the nursing faculty at Augustana College in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, after a 38-year career in nursing and education. Throughout her career, Abbott has been a tireless advocate, not only for nursing, but also for research that preserves the health of Native Americans and increases Native American participation in the STEM fields. Karla received her master's in nursing from Augustana College in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and her doctor of nursing practice from Augsburg College in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Currently, Abbott serves on the Volunteer Executive Council for AARP South Dakota. Originally from Eagle Butte, South Dakota, Abbott is an enrolled member of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. Karla's heritage is unique. Her mom is Lakota and her dad is German. As a Lakota-German woman, she has been able to walk in two roles and instinctively see an opportunity, a challenge from both perspectives. Please welcome Karla Abbott. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
So I ended the introduction before the paragraph with your Lakota name because I wasn't sure how to pronounce it. Would you please say your name?
Sure. It's Ichante Washte Wien, and it translates from Lakota to English to mean good heart woman. And I was given that name by one of my grandmothers, Lucy Swan.
How at what point did your grandmother Lucy Swan give you that name?
Well, she was late in years, in her 80s, and not in great health. So she kind of knew she was going to pass on. And before she passed on, she had several Lakota names. So myself and one of my cousins, Colette, we were both in college at the time. And she was so very proud that we were going to college. This was back in the early 80s. And she wanted to celebrate that. And so she gave us each a Lakota name that belonged to her. And it was a day-long celebration with food, feasting, dancing, and a spiritual leader that gave each of us a eagle feather. And at the time, I thought, why is this such a big deal? But later, I realized that very few of us at the time were going to college. And so it was a celebration. I know that now, but at the time I thought, why all the fuss? I'm just going to college. But it was really a memorable day.
What was the significance to your grandmother of you going to college?
I think for her, it was a legacy and a pride. She, of course, in her generation wasn't offered or had the ability to go to college. I mean, in her lifetime, Native Americans weren't even citizens of the US. And so she saw that happen. But I think she was just so proud that we were going to have that. Excuse me. She would often say to me, you go to school, get your education, and they won't be able to take that away from you. And I thought, take it away from me. Who would try to do that? But she came from a world. I'm so sorry. Came from a world where things were.
I'm drinking water in support of you.
Thank you. No, but my grandmother came from a world where things were taken, and she was so happy that we were getting an education, and that was something that we would always have, and it wouldn't be taken. So,
what has it been like living your adult life from college on with two names?
Well, like you said earlier, Jason, I have walked in both worlds since I was a child. And I think that's my role here in my adult life is when people at work at the hospital that I worked at, if they were sitting around talking about Native people and the information they were sharing wasn't correct, I felt like it was my role to make the correction and educate. Sometimes it was difficult to do that because I felt like sometimes my education was probably falling on deaf ears, but I really felt that was my responsibility. My other responsibility was to live up to my name, Good Heart Woman, and do good things, and also lead by example. So when you are given a Lakota name, you do try to live up to that. And I feel like I've been somewhat with my foot in both worlds, doing those good things, really promoting understanding with those that I worked with, those that I worked for, that kind of thing.
So you've some of your life work has been building bridges where there hasn't been one.
Right. There was one time we were sitting around at the nurse's station at the hospital, and one of my coworkers, she didn't work on our unit very often. She was what was called a float nurse, so she floated to many different units of the hospital. But I knew she had a Native American patient down at the end of the hall that was going for an early morning procedure, and he hadn't received his evening bath. So I said, "Hey, Mary," I said, if you want help bathing that gentleman, I'd be willing to help with you. I'm caught up on my work, so we can do that. I know he has a procedure at 6 a.m. And she said, nah, he's from the reservation, and those guys don't bathe but once a month anyhow. And and my initial response was shock, and I had to pinch myself because it was the 1990s, and she said this. And then I noticed my coworkers, who I worked with on a daily basis, they scattered from the nurses' station. And it was like a scene from Gunsmoke when they're just getting ready to do the gunfight. It was just me and her at the nurses' station. And I was so angry inside. I can't even describe it. But that nurse, because when I first started at Avera, she was so nice to me. I remembered that. And I thought, okay, don't forget how nice she was to you when you first started. So I just calmly said to her, I said, you know what, Mary, I said, I'm from the reservation. And I said, we bathed every day and sometimes twice a day if we had a workout. And her eyes got as big as saucers. And she stood up slowly and she went down and gave that patient probably one of the longest bed baths in Avera McKinnon history. And and so everybody came back to the nurses' station and they thought, wow, we thought you were going to punch her, you know. And I said, you know, I think that when someone can learn, you shouldn't use violence. You know, if they're going to learn, you shouldn't use violence. And I knew she would learn because of her past behavior to me. She was so kind. So, and what's kind of funny is, you know how when people make a mistake and then they overcorrect, just like in driving a car, she would come to work and she'd say, oh, I saw I was on the schedule with you and that I was going to work with you today. So I stopped by Perkins to get a muffin for myself. And here, I got you one. Or she'd say, oh, I see you didn't make it to lunch break. So I was in the gift shop. I got you a candy bar, you know. And finally I had to say, you know what, we're okay. I'm not angry at you. I was at the moment, but I said I'm not anymore. So we're friends. We're still friends. And but that was kind of interesting. And I really know that she learned something that day by what I said. And if I'd have gotten angry at her, learning would not take place.
So you're saying this is fascinating that we can, in an interaction with someone, when we felt hurt offense, something, we can either go down a learning road with them, an anger road with them, but then not the. You're saying they're not the same path.
Right. I would say that, you know, people that respond to that kind of interaction, they'll go, you do have two choices of which path to take. Now some people I have encountered, I am pretty sure they're not going to learn, but even so, I'm not real angry. I just don't give them as much time and education, if you will, because I know the outcome probably isn't going to matter.
So after that day, how much longer did you work with Ednos? Like a couple of years, 10 years?
Oh yeah, yep.
So this is such an illustration of how we can create something that helps us, something that hurts. Like if you had just kept going after her day after day about this, I can't believe. I mean, you could have really created an awkward work environment for yourself, and I mean, she maybe she started it, but that fire could have kept building and building. But you really chose a different path, which allowed her to show up differently than and bring you muffins and candy bars instead of being defensive and yelling and
Yeah. And not only that, Jason, but I had to think about how might she treat Native American patients from then on. You know, I would hope that it was better in some way.
mm, mm. So your story, my friend, has many different directions to it. And I want to do our best to celebrate them all in an hour. So I had your husband Casey Abbott on a few months ago, and he's like right away. He's like, "Oh, you really would love to interview my wife." So, but she's busy right now. She's retiring in a few months or in a month. So the first time I met you was at your retirement party from Augustana College. What did that retirement party mean to you?
It was really in the party itself was 90 minutes long, and I kept thinking, oh gosh, what are we going to do for 90 minutes? But it was really a culmination of all my colleagues that I've worked with. We've had joint projects together, and not just within the nursing department, but also outside of the nursing department. It was very emotional, and it was really a good experience of closure, if you will, to kind of close that out. And actually, at Augustana, they're going to do another retirement party for all retirees across campus in April. So I will attend that as well. But I was very grateful for the people who arrived and shared cake and water and, and just some lasting comments and impressions. I was reminded, for instance, I've done a lot of work with Dr. Luann Eidsness and Ann Peterson, and how great that they came and they said some words about what they learned by just teaching along with me and having me as part of their projects. I did work with Jenny Goebbels in biology and Beth Boyens in literature, and we did some research with Native American talking circles, and we used that with women who were pregnant and letting them express their feelings in a traditional Lakota way. And it was just so exciting. And AARP staff showed up, and I was just so excited because I do a lot with AARP with their volunteer executive council for South Dakota.
Well, we are going to have so much to talk about just right there. You give me so much. So first, would you tell us a little about what a Native American talking circle is?
So a Native American talking circle has been around for hundreds of years. Back when tribal councils met inside of teepees or lodges, it was a time for big decision making, whether to go hunt, whether to make war with another tribe, or whether to move camp or things like that. And oftentimes in these talking circles, of course, the tribal council would sit in a circle, and anyone of importance was right in the circle. Oftentimes behind them were the female members of the tribe. Now, some would say that the female members were the ones that held the most power because they were feeding the information to the male members in front of them, and they would bring their ideas forth. But a talking
Well,
circle is
like feeding, you mean like whispering?
whispering. Yep, yep. And making sure that the person representing them was saying everything that was meant to be said. And with a talking circle, which is very different than the way we communicate now, the first person was given some sort of talking stick. It was a beaded stick, can be ornate, doesn't have to be very ornate. And then they talk and they say everything that's on their mind related to the subject at hand. And then they pass to the right or to the left, however they're conducting their circle. They pass the person next to them that stick, and then that person talks. And whoever is holding the stick really has the floor, and none of us are to interrupt them. And then they pass it to the next person until it goes all the way around the circle. So you can imagine some talking circles took hours, especially if there was something important to discuss. But then some talking circles, maybe not so long. But the importance that I learned from it, even as a younger person growing up, that everybody got a say. Nobody's opinion was squelched or put under the rug. Everybody had equal say. And I think that's what's great about a talking circle is everyone in that circle feels equal or just as good as the people sitting around them, and they can really say what is truly in their heart. Sometimes women, the talking circles I've been in have been mostly women. Sometimes women actually cry, and we just patiently let them cry and express their feelings. Someone next to them, of course, will give them a hug or kind of rub their back and comfort them, but we allow them to cry. And that's what's so beautiful about a talking circle is you can cry. If that is truly what you're feeling, you can express the truth.
So then after the stick's been passed around the circle and everyone's spoken, how, like, that might be a wide variety of opinions and ideas on ways to go. How then would a decision traditionally be made?
So then the leader of the talking circle will summarize and talk about all the different opinions, and then probably might pick a few, and then we do a talking circle again based on those few or what the leader has narrowed it down to. And then people will voice their opinion through the talking circle that way again until finally one decision is unanimous.
So it's not a vote per se, it's much more a much more organic process than that.
Right, right. I tried a talking circle during my doctoral nursing practice program, and I tried it with 7 of my colleagues. And I said, I said, this is the talking stick. And I said, we're going to sit at this table, and I'm going to put the stick in the middle when I'm done talking. And whoever wants to talk next can take the stick and then talk next. So it doesn't always have to be the person next to me goes, because the person next to me may not be ready to speak. So I put the stick in the middle. This was at Augsburg University in my class, and people would pick up the stick and talk, but because they weren't used to the listening part of a talking circle, because as you can imagine, listening is very important. It became like a game of spoons where 2 or 3 nurses were grabbing for that stick because they so wanted to speak. And isn't that true of our culture? We don't slow down and listen. And we're too quick to speak when someone else is speaking. So it was quite the experiment.
How were you taught? How did you learn listening growing up?
I think one of my aunties, I remember we were at a ceremony. Someone was getting their Lakota name, and the elders were kind of sitting nearby us, and they were sitting very quiet. And my auntie, she kind of tapped me on the shoulder. She said, "Do you see our wise ones over there? The elders." She goes, "Look how quiet they are, and they're listening. It is more important to listen than to speak." And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. I've been on some committees or boards, though, where it's been very difficult for my culture, my cultural belief of just listening and waiting until someone's done talking to speak, because sometimes my speaking opportunity was missed because I waited and I was listening. And so I think nowadays I've learned to balance that, where I listen, but yet I also try to make a point or a space for me to convey my ideas and thoughts as well.
So you took the best of listening, but then you also wove in some just speaking up.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So speaking of boards, so it's so great talking with you because we're just flowing from one thing to the other. Speaking of boards, you're on the AARP board.
Yes.
So tell me about AARP and what drew you to be on this board.
Well, it kind of started with my education responsibilities at Augustana. I often would bring in AARP staff members to speak to our students, because who are the better experts on the elderly population, which nursing is so geared towards. All of our patients are living much longer these days. So I brought in many staff members to speak to our students about the elderly health care, elder disparities and what they have to work against, and just growing old in a good way. And through that, I got I got roped into, if you will, being on the board. And I said, sure, I'd love to volunteer and do some things. In fact, this afternoon, I'm going to the Inn on Westport, and I'm going to talk to the residents there about caregiving. Because in South Dakota right now, we have so many family members that are caregivers for their elderly family members. And part of it's because we're such a rural state and not a lot of nursing homes available. And families just want to care for their loved ones at home and keep them close by. That's the other reason too. So it involves a lot when you're caring for an elder person in your family, getting them to the doctor appointments, making sure they're taking their medications, making sure they understand why they're on medicine, helping them to navigate finances, helping them to do their end of life planning, that kind of thing. But also just helping them live their last days in the best way possible, and whatever that entails. And sometimes it's just putting grandma and grandpa into a car to drive around town or wherever they grew up. Maybe it's the next town over. Drive them for sort of a reminiscent journey on what
Um,
did you do here? What was this like? But all of this takes time, takes financial resources. It just takes energy. And what I hope to visit with the residents today about is you're all in a residential facility, but there are many South Dakotans that don't have the financial means to be in a facility like yours. And this is what their caregivers are doing. And just kind of giving them education about that.
what were you say some people seem to lead more active retirements, and some people seem to lead a retirement where they maybe bored much more often, struggling to find things to do. What would you say about? I'm asking this partly out of self-interest. I want to lead a very active retirement when I retire. How does one plan an active retirement?
I think first, the planning for an active retirement is mindset, keeping busy. Even before I retired, I had a lot of people tell me to start scheduling things. Don't wait until you retire to do things, or you'll get in that rut of just sitting around and maybe watching Netflix all day or something like that. So I scheduled this speaking engagement with some elderly residents. I just got back from an AARP conference, and they were
So
telling,
you retired what, 2 weeks ago?
yeah, right, or 3 weeks, yeah, 2 weeks ago. So I've been busy. I jumped in,
And
and
then you just got back from a conference.
yes, and that conference was really about training us to help our volunteers in South Dakota and all the states that were represented on how to make our membership more digital, getting our members to use telephone apps, because a lot of members they have cell phones, and so but getting them to use apps and programming. They can watch videos, they can take part in surveys, they can take part in games. We provide even online. AARP provides concerts. So the Haig brothers have also been featured, and AARP members can sign up digitally and attend a concert without leaving their homes. So we realize that not all AARP members are digitally savvy, if you will. So that's our job, is to kind of promote that and usher them along into the digital age, and still maintaining. There will be some who have said, no, 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 digital and online services are not for me. I still want the catalog. I still want the magazine every month. I still want letters. I still want information in the mail in print form, and we've honored that. We're like, no, that's okay. This conference was more for let's promote more digital use, but let's preserve if someone wants the old way of doing things, if you will.
Nice. This brings up the notion of learning again. I mean, seems to me we can look at learning two ways. Like as we grow older, we can say, "Oh, I've learned everything I need to know. I can just coast." Or else we can keep learning, like learn how to use new apps. For a small example, what would you say? Which way of learning appeals to? Oh, what's your attitude towards learning? I guess.
Well, I would say my attitude is we are all lifelong learners. All of us. Learning doesn't stop as we age. And I tell that to even our nursing students. When you graduate with this degree in nursing, your learning isn't done. You're always going to learn, especially with healthcare, because it changes so often. You're always going to be a learner. So kind of get your mind wrapped around that concept. And I think with elderly and aging population, or the 50 plus population, we also want them to wrap their mind around that learning is going to always be there. And it's a good thing. It's scary sometimes, but it's a good thing. I think about, Jason, when COVID hit, and I had never done anything like this online. I wouldn't know how to use Zoom or this podcast even. I mean, I would have been so frightened. But look at what that COVID epidemic taught all of us. And many of us learned some new things. And I would have sworn I could never teach an online course, but I was forced to with COVID, and it turned out okay. So.
And of course, you had a choice. You could have somehow said, I don't do online courses. I'll just retire early. But you chose to adapt. You chose to.
Yes. And I think that's kind of healthcare as we know it, but I think other professions as well. They're always having to adapt to new ways of doing things. I don't know much about HVAC and heating and cooling of buildings, but as I listen to my husband sometimes on the phone, I can tell that he's teaching someone, whether it's his employee or a customer, about new ways to cool and heat an existing structure or building. So I know that in other areas, everyone's having to learn new things.
I wanted to be sure I celebrated this moment of your retirement party. I could only come for a few minutes, but I was lucky enough to see your husband and your daughter give you the gift of a star quote. What did that moment mean to you?
Wow, that I get choked up about it again just thinking about it. In Lakota culture, the gift of a star quilt is such an honor. And it was a total surprise, for one. I was very shocked. And but anyway, the star quilt is so meaningful because of what it is. It's a depiction of that morning star. When the Lakota man walked out of the teepee every morning looking to the east, he could see that Lakota star in the sky. No matter where they camped, no matter where they traveled, it was there. And so it was that connection to the next life, almost immortality, if you will, because it symbolized, when Lakota leave this earth, how they travel up the Milky Way and live up among the stars until someday they come back on that Milky Way to this earth again. And so that is such a meaningful gift and a message, if you will, that there is immortality. Just like with retirement, there is still life and there are still things to do before we go on to that next life. And in the old days, that star pattern was painted on buffalo robes. But when Native Americans were being placed on reservations, the people that were colonizing them taught the women that you could sew this, you could put this on fabric. And so that's where that star quilt came about. And but it is a great symbol. And when Lakota people are celebrating birthdays or a baby or the birth of a baby, their star quilts are given. And when we leave this earth at a funeral, star quilts are brought for the family to give away to important friends of that person who has died. So they're used in a lot of ways, and anytime they're brought forth, it's a huge honor.
Beautiful, beautiful. When we talked, had a conversation preparing for this, you spoke a lot about the community you've experienced on the reservation. Could you talk about that, some and the impact on and its impact on your life?
Oh, Eagle Butte for me was a great community to grow up in. And right from the get-go, because of the Pick Sloan project, or the damming of the Missouri River for tourism and hydroelectric power, that brought my mother's Lakota community up to Eagle Butte, and then her community was flooded, the old Cheyenne agency. And so right away, it brought two cultures together, a German, mostly German culture, and this Native American culture. And immediately in the late 1950s, they had to learn how to get along. They had to learn how to live. And it was pretty rocky from my perspective of watching both worlds, because at the same time, the civil rights movement was going on in the South, and that was on TV. And I thought, shoot, that's what's going on here, you know? We have our own civil rights changes and bumps in the road going on. So I would often observe some discrepancies, if you will. Maybe we had one cafe in town, and as far as service, when I would go with my German grandmother to eat, it was a much more pleasant, easygoing experience than when I would go with a Native American grandmother or grandparent to eat there. Maybe not so, service wasn't quite as swift or things like that. So I would pick up on that. And I also witnessed a woman once in the store. She was buying some sewing things, and she was yelling at the cashier because she was paying a higher price than the non-native customers. And it was sort of the business owner's way of compensating for Native Americans not having to pay sales tax at the time. And so then they were compensating. They charged a Native American customer a little bit more to make up for that. And so this Native American woman, she was not having it. She was yelling. She was making it very uncomfortable for the store owner and the manager to have those two different prices. As a child, I don't remember the outcome, or if they gave her the lower price, or did she just leave the store? I don't remember. But it was interesting watching things like that grow up, and watching, of course, the addiction that was present because of the unemployment, the despair, things taken from them, or Native Americans sort of being cheated out of their land and things like that. That created a lot of depression, angst, and the coping mechanism was alcohol, which was sort of a revenue for the non-native business owners. I could see a lot of trouble, a lot of pain, and things like that. And when I think about going to college and education, I think about all of my Native American classmates who were just as smart. Some were even smarter than I was. But they didn't get to go to college because the resources weren't there for them. And now I think things like that have gotten better. The economic resources, a little bit better on the reservation, not a lot, but I also think the resources for Native American students to attend college are better. So, yeah. But I still would say Eagle Butte, for the good parts, it was a great place to grow up. Um, there was about 800 to 1,000 people when I was there living as until the age of 18. And it was kind of a small town feel. We also, my brother, who was kind of a daredevil, he would like to race his car at the time. And he knew that if he was speeding on where the non-native jurisdiction was, if he just kept driving to where the Native American jurisdiction was, he could never get a speeding ticket. So he knew the two worlds and where those boundaries were. He was very savvy. And yeah, but
how did you know that you wanted to go to college?
I think because my mom went to college. She went to a 3-year nursing program in Mitchell, which was with the Presbyterian Church, and now it's Dakota Wesleyan University. And she was the only one in her family that got a college degree. And I really saw the advantages that it gave her as opposed to her sisters. And so I was very impressed with her profession. She was also a nurse. And one morning, about 7 a.m., she came home. She had worked the night shift, and she said, "Guess what? I delivered a baby in an airplane on the way to Rapid City during the night." I was like, "What?" Like, that's for me. I'm doing that, And she said that the woman was so impressed with her that she named the baby after, she took my brother's middle name of Paul, and she put that into the son that she just delivered. She put that in his name. And my mom described it, the airline pilot, it was just a small plane. It was my mom, the patient, and the pilot. And he had real long arms. And so she had him holding up the IV bag of fluid, and he held that up while he was flying the plane.
Oh
and
my
he
God.
kept turning around, and is everything okay? My mom would say, turn the heat up a little bit, and he'd crank the heat. And, and so it was really interesting and exciting. And that's why I went into nursing. And unfortunately, in my 38 years, I have never delivered a baby in the airplane. And I don't know that it's in the cards for me unless I'm on a commercial flight. Maybe I'll get to do so. but there's always hope.
There's always hope. So in terms of nursing, there's the science and technique of nursing, and then there's the essence of nursing. And how do you think of those two parts of nursing, and how do you combine those in your career?
For me, I felt it was an easy way to combine. I was used to growing up in two worlds, so I could see both parts of nursing, the essence and the science of it, and kind of exercise them as though they were two worlds as well. I have in my career taught many students who are very scientifically minded, and they really struggle with the essence, the caring of nursing. And so a lot of times in my instruction, I would try to inject a little bit of that too is important. And I sympathize with them because when I was their age and my instructors were trying to tell me that sitting and listening with the patient was nursing, I would say, "Oh my gosh, that is not nursing at all. That's just listening." Well, how foolish was I? Now, at my age now, listening is so very important. And taking that time to build that relationship involves listening. If you want to build a good relationship with a patient, you definitely have to listen. And oftentimes it saves frustration. It saves the patient from having to repeat things if you just listened and gathered from them what is important to them, and then focus your scientific energies on what's needed, but also on what their needs are too.
So you can listening to the patient is kind of the gateway to focusing on the science in terms of what they need.
Right. They're very intertwined, and you cannot do one without the other, in my opinion. And listening, not just with what the patient's saying, but what is the patient's body telling you as you listen to heart sounds, lung sounds, or you're observing respiratory rate, you're observing color, you're looking at the skin, and feeling the circulation. Those are also ways of gathering your data too, to support your scientific actions, and also reporting whether the scientific interventions you've done, are they having impact positively or negatively?
So a big component of nursing is therapeutic touch, and during COVID, that wasn't possible. What was that like?
That was so different. COVID really did a number on the nursing therapeutic touch. That 6-foot rule really distanced us. So we had to do different things with a mask on, sometimes with full body gear on. You had to say things like, I'm your nurse today, and I want you to know I have you forefront in my mind, and I want to give you the best care possible. So a lot of reassurance verbally when you couldn't do the touching. Or if a patient was crying, you can say things like, I can see that you're crying. I want you to know that my heart is with you right now. Little comforting statements like that had to take place of that touch. And I always felt concerned for the male nurses, because with them, touch is a different thing. It's almost, you have to be 2 or 3 times as careful with touch, because of, we don't know if that person has terrible PTSD from a touch from a female, from a male patient or male person. So you don't know as a male nurse what your touch is going to elicit as a form of response. So actually for them, learning those phrases, I'm your nurse today, you're forefront in my mind. I can see that you're crying. Know that I'm there with you. And I'm concerned for you. Or so I think for male patient or male nurses, that kind of stuff helped them in their practice. Touch was really different. And speaking of touch, I always tell people that if you want to show the utmost respect when you're dealing with a Native American person, whether it's a patient or a Native American business person or professional person, always reach and shake their hand. And that shows the Native American person that you respect them. And it's a very easy gesture. And you can shake hands multitude of ways. Just, I would remind you that a Native American woman, we're taught to shake hands very gently. It's a touch and a drop, just a little bit of a grab. But we're taught that way. And so Native American men will shake hands like a non-Native American male would. So, but touch is very important. And in Lakota culture, it's the utmost form of respect to shake hands.
Good to know. Really good. Thanks. So as we begin to wrap up here, so many people are trying to bridge different worlds. whatever that means to them. What would your advice, encouragement be to someone listening who might be trying to bridge different worlds in their life?
I would say go with what your passion is. For me, my passion was education. So, and for my husband too. So Casey and I have set up scholarships for Native American students at SDSU, at Augustana University, at Dordt College, the Sioux Falls Area Foundation, and the South Dakota Foundation. And because that's our passion, we felt that if you can get an education, you at least have the power to move anywhere you want, to work wherever you want, and you have the power to give back, and you have the power to help maybe one of your relatives achieve an education. So I would encourage people, if you're educationally minded, and you live in the Sioux Falls School District, call up one of the high schools and offer to pay for a student's ACT testing or their review course for the ACT. Offer to pay for any student's free lunch or their lunch. It's not free. So ask if there are students who need help with paying for their school lunches, because you cannot learn on an empty tank, if you will. You have to have food in your system. And start small, start like that. Or be a mentor. LSS still has a very good mentor program. I think there's a new mentorship program with the city of Sioux Falls. I heard Mayor Tenhaken talk about that on a radio spot. So offer to be a mentor. My husband was a mentor to a Native American youth. And even though that person is in his 20s now, almost 30, my husband still gets together with him, and they connect, and he has built a relationship not only with that youth but his family as well. So I would say there's a lot of opportunities to do that, and just be open, attend and support Lakota events in the community. Native American Day, we have a lot of things going on, so attend as many activities as you can and just learn and ask questions. There I go with learning again.
Wow. Thank you for all those ideas. Last question. So in my work, I talk about the power of doing an imperfect best, and what I mean by that is I envision the best I want to achieve, and as I go for it, as obstacles and challenges come up, instead of using them as reasons to quit, I learn from that and move forward. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
To me, it means that sometimes, because of the stressors in this world, you may reach out your hand to shake another person's hand and they may not receive it. That's okay. In my mind, that's okay, because I have left the message that I respect you. I wanted to shake your hand. It was your choice whether to take that handshake or not, and you will live with that. But first, when that happened to me, in the early days when that happened to me, I would give up. I would go, "Oh, well, that's it. I'm not going to try to do anything for that person anymore," or whatever. But I had to think about that and realize I don't know what they're going through that day or what's on their mind. Maybe they had just been disrespected or criticized or treated badly. I don't know. So I always say now, if you're going to show a form of respect or reach out and shake someone's hand and it's not well received at that moment, that's okay. We didn't achieve that. We didn't achieve that milestone in the relationship building, but don't give up on that. Keep shaking hands.
Keep shaking hands. Keep shaking hands. Th- th- Thank you, Karla. And would you say your Lakota name one more time?
Sure. It's Ichante Washte Wien, and it's good heart woman.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you being on.
This has been a pleasure for me and so wonderful meeting you, Jason. So
Wonderful meeting you too. I hope for many more conversations.
yes.
Oh, conversation is one of the great things in this world. Just think of how much goodness and wisdom and practical common sense Karla shared with us in the last hour, and at the end she talked about ways to get involved and to really reach out a hand to and support other people. It was just so inspiring and ennobling to do the work of moving forward. Thanks for tuning into this episode. As always, leave comments if you have them. We love comments. And tune in next week for another episode of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. Until then, have a great day. And remember, you are the best because you are the one. You are the one you in the world. You can do.